Brand photography is not the same as wedding photography or portrait photography. I think it's a lot more visually challenging because not only do you need to create an artistically beautiful photo, you also have to create something that is strategic and actually useful for your clients when they are marketing their own business. We have so much to talk about today, so let's just dive into the top 10 things that you can do right now to instantly improve your brand photography at your very next session. Tip number one is to allow multiple outfits. I actually don't put a cap or a limit on how many outfits my clients can bring to a session. Of course, I provide a general recommendation, right? We're not going to fit 100 outfits in one day. That would be crazy. But we need to prioritize variety. I've had a lot of clients tell me that in addition to my portfolio, one of the big reasons why they chose to work with me versus someone else is because I don't cap the outfits that you can bring. And some of the other photographers that they were talking to said that you could only bring 2 outfits over a 90-minute session. Now, I know all photographers work differently, but for personal brand photography, 2 outfits over the span of an hour and a half is not enough. Like I mentioned in my last video, we have to be thinking about the end use of a photo. Once a client has used photos where they're wearing the same outfit, more than 4, 5 times, that gets old. They get tired of posting it and they're much less likely to use it. So, what we should prioritize instead is getting them a variety of photos in a variety of different outfits and make sure that they have enough to last them weeks, months, years to come. We also don't have to stress out our client and say, bring 10 different outfits, right? Tell them to bring things to change up their look. Can they bring a ponytail holder to change their hair? Can they bring a jacket to throw on over a couple of different shirts, different shoes, accessories? Little things like that will help get variety without spending so much time changing. Tip number two is to include a lot of pre-photo shoot communication. I do about an hour-long planning call with every single client before every photo shoot. This is absolutely required. I have had some clients try to wiggle out of it and say, oh, well, I don't need that. Like, I think I know what I want. It's not for them, it's for me. Because if I don't have that planning call, I don't know what they need. I am not going to show up to a personal brand photo shoot without a plan. This is also the opportunity to let them know if you're including multiple outfits, tell them, hey, I want you to bring a lot of outfits, but these are going to be quick outfit changes so that we can get you as much variety as possible. From the time a client signs their contract with me to photo shoot day, I have an automated sequence of emails. I have several touch points with every client that tells them exactly what to expect the day of. This is helpful for them because they usually like to have this information up front, but it also covers my butt in case we show up to the shoot and they are expecting something to happen, but it doesn't. I can then refer back to all of the emails that I sent them beforehand and say, hey, well, in this email, I mentioned this. And I'm not bombarding them with emails, right? I'm giving them useful, relevant information to them. But these touch points really help build that trust between me and my client, with me being the expert professional photographer, so that the day of the shoot, they trust me to guide them the entire time. Tip number three is to have a shot list and to plan beforehand. So when I'm doing that pre-photo shoot planning call, what I'm doing is writing out the shots that we need to get. I go through any PDF guides that they have, I go through their socials, I come up with ideas that I add to the shot list so I don't forget the day of. This is different from portrait photography because with portraiture, you can be a lot more flowy and inspired, but with personal brand photography, you can still incorporate some of that flowiness and inspiration, but we gotta have a goal. Your client came to you because they needed a specific photo for a specific reason, so the plan that you create includes all of these so that nobody's forgetting anything the day of. Number four is very similar to creating a plan, but not only do you need a plan, you need a timeline. It's just like what you would do if you were shooting a wedding. We want to put together a timeline for when we expect things to happen. If there are multiple locations, multiple props, multiple outfit changes, I write a timeline of when I expect us to go to location number 2, when I expect us to change into different outfits. I'm not being so exact, like down to the minute, but I have that rough timeline so that we can stay on track and make sure we have allocated enough time to get everything on our list. Now, my timelines are flexible. I know that a lot of the time we'll change it and we won't necessarily stick to it 100%. But I have the timeline in place so that when I'm on set during photo shoot day, if we are moving along a little bit more slowly, or if a client wants to change something to the plan, I can refer back to the timeline and say, okay, we can do that, but here's what we'll have to change on the timeline, or here's a location we won't be able to get to if we make these changes. We can totally do that, but I check with them first and make sure that they know, like, hey, this is the plan we had. We're deviating from the plan. I can do that, but I want you to know that you said this. So we have the plan and we have a timeline to set expectations with our client, and it helps them feel confident that you know what you're doing the day of the photo shoot. Tip number 5 is to have a team of referrals. Okay, maybe you can't do this instantly, but have this in the back of your mind. When your clients come to you for personal brand photography, they are likely going to ask questions like, what should I do about my hair and makeup? What should I do about my wardrobe? What about locations? So I have a list of trusted referrals, people that I work with all the time, so that when my clients ask me these questions, I can immediately send people their way. For hair and makeup specifically, I actually build this into the cost of my packages. I had so many people want to book hair and makeup that it became easier for me if I just built it into the cost. Also, photo shoots where people do work with my preferred artists turn out a lot better usually than when people try to DIY their own makeup. Now that I've been doing this for so long, I also just know the value of having a hair and makeup artist on set. Sometimes people get really nervous about this because they've never worked with a hair and makeup artist before, or they didn't feel like themselves when they had professional hair and makeup done. So it's always important to find artists that understand that about your client and can do looks where your clients feel comfortable and confident in their own skin. I also just really love having a hair and makeup artist on set throughout the whole photo shoot because that gives us more flexibility. Number one, for them to change looks if they want to change their hair, if they want to go more dramatic on their eyes or makeup or whatever. The artist is there to handle that. And the artist keeps track of their hair and makeup while you're shooting. That saves me time and it allows me to be more creative and more productive because while I'm worrying about the composition, the lighting, all of the photography stuff, my artist is worried about flyaways or making sure that their hair is laying properly. It really does save so much time in the long run, and the photos turn out so much better. Number 6 is something you can do instantly, and that is to remove distractions from photos. Now, it is important to ask if you can move things around before you just start moving things, and also think about it contextually. Let's say you're working in a medical office or something and there are cleaning supplies in the background. Cleaning supplies usually aren't very aesthetic, so yeah, my first default reaction is to get rid of it, but contextually, because this is a brand photo shoot, sometimes it might make sense to leave cleaning supplies in the background so that people know, like, hey, this is a sanitary establishment. We follow rules and protocols. That might sound ridiculous, but I have had people say, no, I want to make sure we leave that in the background because some of their customers have asked about it. So this is a very specific example with cleaning supplies. Whether or not you decide to remove things is up to you and the client, but there are some things that I am always looking out for. Random wires and cords that are plugged into outlets, pens, pencils, furniture that doesn't match, things that just tend to be lying around. If it is distracting you, then it is probably distracting in the photo. So always ask your client, like, hey, I'm going to move this around. Like, can I do that? Tip number 7 is to provide a lot of different compositions and expressions. You don't know and can't assume where the client is going to be using this photo. So for every pose or setup, let's say you have your client sitting working at their desk. I am getting as many compositions as possible. So a wide shot, one shot where they're off to the third, a vertical shot, vertical full body, vertical half body, headshot, with them looking at the camera, looking away from the camera. Different expressions like smiling or a more serious face or again looking away from the camera. It seems like a lot, and yes, I end up delivering a lot of images because of this, but I would rather my client have the option to choose from all of these different expressions. The worst case scenario is they end up with a photo and background that they absolutely love, but they wish that they were looking at the camera instead of looking away from the camera. Or they wish that they were looking away from the camera versus at the camera. When you capture this variety of compositions and expressions, you are setting the client up for success and giving them all of the options that they need to use the photos wherever they need to be used. If we think about the end use, we also want to think about the tone. Not only where are they visually putting this photo, but what is the caption that's going along with that? If you have a client that talks about more serious topics, then they probably need more photos than just them smiling at the camera, right? This is why it's so important to do the planning beforehand so you know this ahead of time. If they talk about more serious photos, if they have specific needs or specific expressions or even pointing in different places because they're going to put text off to the side of the image. We want to know this stuff up front. Tip number 8, and this is a general rule of photography, but especially with brand photography, don't cut off people's limbs or extremities. If it's a full body photo, don't cut off the image at their ankles. Make sure you're including all of these things because let's say you have a full body photo and you put it on a website. if their feet are missing, that's going to be really distracting and it's not going to look as professional as it could have been had their feet been included. Another thing to really keep in mind is if you are working with someone on a computer or if you have multiple people in a shot, we want to make sure that we're not cutting off their hands in the photo. Of course, I still end up with shots where, yeah, maybe I cut off someone's hand or their like foot or part of their body on accident. And yes, sometimes I will still deliver those photos if their expression is really great or whatever. But this is one of those small details that really makes a big difference in elevating your body of work as a whole. Along with not cutting off people's hands or feet in photos, you also want to make sure that if there are leading lines or straight lines in the photo, that those are aligned, or you fix the perspective distortion in post. I mentioned this in a previous video, but if you have lines that are slanted, it's going to be really obvious if that client puts the photo on their website where there are straight lines and you compare it to your slanted horizon line or slanted, I don't know, wall or door or whatever it is, it becomes super obvious. I almost always have the grid feature turned on my camera and make sure everything is straight, so when I take it to my computer, I don't have to do a ton of work there. Tip number 9 is to stay in control of the photo shoot. Your clients will probably be very excited. A lot of mine bring tons and tons of ideas, which I love. That's why I don't stack my photo shoot plan like back to back to back. There is time for magic, but sometimes we can get a little bit carried away. Or sometimes if you have a team on set, like a makeup artist, an assistant, a stylist, that's a lot of people, it's a lot of chefs in the kitchen. If you are finding that it's getting a little bit out of control or that people are bossing you around, remind yourself, no, you are in charge. Yes, the client is the star of the show, but they hired you for a reason. One really common example of this is when my client wants to stay in a certain outfit and go to like a bunch of different places, I will kindly and gently remind them like, hey, here's the plan that we made. We can do this if you want to, but this is going to take away from this location and this shot. We can definitely stay in that outfit if you're feeling it, but I wanted to double check with you. Or sometimes my clients will bring friends because I recommend it. It helps them feel more confident, so they have like a hype buddy. Sometimes that friend will also get super excited and spit out all these ideas. And of course, the client is going to be trusting of the friend, right? But if you find that there's, again, too many chefs in the kitchen, it's important to remind everybody like, hey, these are all really great ideas. We have 5 minutes to do this, and then we need to move on so that we can get everything on the shot list. And if you have done all of the pre-communication work and touch points and planning with your client, they're going to trust you and be like, oh, that's right. Emily put this plan together. Emily knows what she's doing. Let's do whatever she says. And tip number 10 to instantly improve your brand photography is to choose soft and even lighting. In personal brand photography, you have time to get the light right and to get the setup right. It's so important to be prepared for wherever you're shooting. This is why it's so key to have a really good understanding of light so that you are prepared for any situation. I have been to clients' offices where I show up and it is a lot darker than the pictures made it seem. Yeah, sometimes that does mean I have to take a little bit more time in setup to make sure everything is nicely lit, but it's so worth it and it's so important for the end result for your clients. The biggest, most important thing you can do is if you are in an office with overhead lights, turn them off. We do not want nasty fluorescent lights muddying up our headshots or our lifestyle shots, okay? Turn off the lights, bring your own artificial lights. Something that used to happen to me a lot on set is I would get so nervous taking the time to set up lighting and communicating that to my client because I felt like if I couldn't do it quickly, then maybe I'm not a professional. But that's not true. Like sometimes it does take time and you're in tricky lighting situations. The important thing to do is again, stay in control and tell your client like, hey, this might take me a few minutes to set up the lighting, so relax, have your coffee, have your water, whatever you're doing. I'm just gonna make sure that I get this right so the rest of your photo shoot goes off without a hitch. I can do deeper dives into any one of these tips if you want to, so just let me know in the comments if that's something that you wanna see. We talked a lot about planning in this video, so in my next video, I'm going to be talking all about how exactly to plan a brand photo shoot from start to finish. I'll see you there.